Welcome to your Sprinkle of Hope podcast. I'm your host, Jason, and Shane and I are talking about synergizing today. And I almost like the word and want you to get like synergized, synergize yourself.
I love that word. It really does feel like you're energizing or just being more proactive about your choices. You might ask, your question might be, why is this important to me? And it we'll always go back to, we're all here to help each other. And if we can learn how to synergize our efforts with everybody that we come in contact with, the world will become a better place.
Welcome to the Sprinkled with Hope podcast.
This is Jason. And this is Shane.
And it's podcast time.
Welcome back to your Sprinkle with Hope podcast and your host, Jason. And today, Shane and I are going to be talking about synergizing your interpersonal relationships. And I loved that word, like synergizing. It just gets you motivated, right? So we're here to motivate you today to help your relationships become better. So right off the bat, hitting you with a quote. I know, total shocker. Del Close, who is an American actor, said this: every interpersonal situation has a solution in which everyone wins. And I just love that because I think it gets to the core that, okay, there's situations that arise where you have disagreements or whatever, but that can be the gist of as far as it goes, right? You have a disagreement and you agree that you're going to move on, and you can still love that person and enjoy being around them. You don't have to attack them or think of them any less than you did just because you have a disagreement. That seems silly to me to just because you don't agree with what they do, that you're going to sever a relationship or whatever it be. So here are some key elements that are necessary to synergizing a relationship. And I'm just going to blow through these fairly quickly, but they must have similar goals, must have a sense of self, stay open to new ideas. We've talked about that before, just having an open mind, embrace trust, which I'll talk about a little bit more, should understand that the best way to do things is by working together. So working together is the best way. Respect each other, have the aspiration to comprehend other people, capable of controlling the negative judgment, which sometimes we often just pass a negative judgment on someone else, and then have trust in the win-win scenario as opposed to a win-loss. So go into it with a mindset that, yeah, we can come out of this better than we went going into it.
That's awesome. I wanted to start off by giving a little bit more detail to synergy. Some might wonder, well, what really is that? And it helped me to describe it a little bit more. So a synergy occurs when two or more people create a greater contribution together than they would independently. So if you're going to create a synergistic relationship, that's going to be based on co-creating outcomes. So again, you're wanting to co-create the outcome. You want to work together to create this outcome. Now that can be with a parent, a spouse, a brother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, coworker, friend, anyone really that you want to build or develop a greater contribution together. That's when you're creating synergy. So you want the outcome to be collectively better than you were individually. Some of the words that I came up with that kind of align with synergy are teamwork, collaboration, harmony, alliance, those type of things. So again, you can see that you're really working together, and Jason's already pointed out some things you can do to create that synergy between each other. A really good example of a synergy is, think about a band. So you might have singer, backup singer, drummer, guitar, sax, violinist, all these things that go on with a band. I mean, you could have 400 people in the band if you wanted, but together they make up the sound of the band, right? So if you take the drummer and put him alone, you're going to only have the sound of the drum. If you put him with the band, it creates this synergy, or the makeup of the sound is much better than he or she is alone, if that makes sense. So Anik Ezekiel, I looked him up, but it didn't have any information on who this person was, only that he said something really amazing. For those of you who like math, and I'm not one of them, but this one really struck me. He says, we, in quotes, we multiplies the power of I. So we multiplies the power of I. And I just love that, because we, so two or more of us, multiplies the power of one, or I. And I just thought it was awesome how he said that. And a quote that I actually shared on my personal social media, in fact, yesterday, from Shep Hyken. He's a customer service and experience expert. I love this. He says, recognize that every interaction that you have is an opportunity to make positive impact on others. And as we're talking about synergy and working together to create this better outcome together, I honestly believe that every single interaction we have with anyone, whether we're on a subway in New York, or we're anywhere in the Bahamas, or at work, we can make a positive impact on every single person we come in contact with, if we choose, if we want that. And I think some of the things that we're going to share today will go a long way in creating that positive impact on others.
Absolutely. And I think I love that, just that idea and concept of having a band and molding together. I can think of, a lot of the good music that I enjoy. And if the music was just the drummer, like how boring, and, it might be cool for a minute, but then you're like, he's playing the same tune over and over again, and there's no words, there's no additional music. So it might sound very plain. Right. And so I loved that you shared that. I thought that was really cool. So when I looked up the, synergizing and just thinking about this topic, Stephen Covey came instantly to the top of the, the search that I was looking for. And Stephen Covey, who was an American educator, author, businessman, and a keynote speaker, he said this: synergy is better than your way or my way. It's our way. And I just love that, because it kind of comes back to what Shane was just talking about, in that you're collectively coming to the conclusion or solution, right, of the thing that you're trying to cover. So the next key points that I'm going to talk about is actually from his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I'm not going to take any credit for these next few points, but I just thought that it went well with his quote that he just said. So the first one is, give importance to the opinion of others. So this actually allows you to control your emotions and find an accurate solution to the problem, because you listen to the opinions of others, then there is a stronger possibility of getting closer to the perfect solution, right? So if you listen to their opinion and you take it in, then you actually can come to something else that you weren't fully aware of. This one I thought hit home pretty well, because we don't often really take criticism very well, but it's take criticism with patience. And I liked that it added that patience section in there, the word patience. So listening to criticism can be difficult, right? If I was to criticize you and say, you're doing it all wrong, you'd be like, oh, really? And you probably would shut me out, right? And you probably wouldn't listen to anything I'm going to say. But if you can handle criticism patiently, this will allow you to identify some of your weaknesses in the eyes of others. So I thought that as you kind of think about criticism, you get to see, okay, maybe that's something I actually need to work on. Maybe it's something I'm not super great at. But if I listen with some patience, maybe I can become a little bit better than I was even 5 minutes ago, because I'm listening to what you have to say. right? We're none of us are perfect. And so if you listen to what their inputs, you could get a good output from it. And then along those same lines is the third one is listen to the ideas of others, right? So you're going to, get this criticism or whatever. They're going to have some input. 2 is better than 1. 3 is better than none, that kind of a concept. And so everyone has a different perspective. Shane's got a different perspective than I do. This is why us doing this and even looking up the same topic, we come to almost completely different sides of the coin. Usually, I think we've only had 1 or 2 out of almost every episode where we've had some overlap with a quote or something like that. Usually we're like completely molding together the thoughts and ideas that we have. So it's getting somebody else's perspective. The fourth thing is creating change, which is often hard. But Covey highlights that the force. So I'm just going to read this, so what he says, so you understand. But he said that the forces that motivate you for the change are logical, and the forces that push you away are emotional. The best way to adapt real change is creating an atmosphere that weakens the emotional force and encourages a logical force. So you're taking a little bit of that emotion out of the situation. Oftentimes when we have our emotions involved, we feel hurt, dejected, whatever it is, right? We don't want to feel that way. We want to feel good about ourselves and good about the situation. And so if you can think about it logically as opposed to having your emotions, you're going to have a far better outcome. And then the last point was look for challenging people. And what I mean by that is somebody who's going to challenge you a little bit or challenge the situation. Synergy can come from working with those people who have a different mindset than yours. The benefit is they are thinking a little bit outside the box, and therefore you can create that synergy with their thoughts and yours as you're having them kind of challenge you and challenge the situation that you're in, and don't take it personal, right? Just say, oh, okay, maybe there's a different way to look at this, different outcome. And you create that synergy by working with those kinds of people.
That's really cool. That's great. I love Stephen Covey and the stuff he's done. So I came up with a few C words that really tie into the synergy: clarify, commit, communicate, and cooperate. And I want to expound a little bit on each. So when I talk about clarify or clarity, you want to really identify and establish what each person's role is in. So let's say you're at work and you want to create synergy within your team. You're going to establish each person's role within the team so they understand what things they're doing. Along with that, you're committing to work as a team, that it's no longer about each individual and what they want. It's about what the team wants. And you concentrate on your mutual needs and not your own individual needs. So the third one is communicate. And I think that's so important if you want to do anything, really good communication goes a long way. That something I learned with my wife years ago when we communicate is that if she and I are talking and she says something, I can clarify or respond back and say, is this what you said? And she can say, yeah, that's what I said. So I understand. That's a communication that I'm talking about. And then cooperate with synergy goes a long way. It's not really about you, like you're part of the band or part of the team or part of the marriage or whatever you're doing to create synergy. When you're cooperating, you're really looking at the we in that math. I also thought, again, I don't really like math, and 1 + 1 could equal 2, but if you're creating synergy, it could equal 3, 4, 17. It's that collaboration and working together that's going to make that 1 + 1 equal more than 2, if that makes sense. Again, I think math isn't my strongest point, but when I think about things like that, it makes more sense to me because 1 + 1 could equal 2, but if we're working together, it's so much stronger than 2. in my mind, it's 3 or 4 or 800, whatever you want to make it. And so those are some of my thoughts when I was looking at this. And then I have a last quote by Hermann Hesse. He's a German Swiss poet, novelist, and painter. And he says, "It is not our purpose to become each other. It is to recognize each other, to learn to see the other and honor him for what he or she is." I just loved how he put that really it's not our purpose to become, I don't need to become like Jason or become like anyone else but me. But as Jason and I are working together, it's to recognize each other, learn from each other, and then honor Jason for who he is. Honor the person that you're working with, synergizing with, for who they really are. And I honestly believe if we do that, change our mindset and focus on that we're going to see the other person for who they really are and create that synergy that we want.
I love that. That's a really good mindset to have, is just seeing them for who they actually are, not trying to change them to what you want them to be. I love that idea. So I have another quote from actually a guest of ours that we've had on our show, Eric Qualman, who's a motivational speaker. And I would say, go back and listen to his episode, which is episode 81. So if you haven't listened to it, or you've listened to it and it's been a while, because that's been almost 100 episodes now ago, go back and listen to episode 81. Super great guy. Loved that guy. Great conversation. But he said this: "You're talking about a younger generation, Generation Y, whose interpersonal communication skills are different from Generation X. The younger generation is more comfortable saying something through a digital mechanism than even face-to-face." And the reason why I brought this quote up is, A, love Eric Qualman, great guy. And 2, it brings to my mind that there's a different way to see something, right? So if a generation is better texting than another, then go to that level, like Shane's kind of talking about. Have that synergy at their spot, right? Don't try to say, well, I'm never going to do that because that's not the way I like it. I want to do it this way. Try to come to their level. I mean, if we have a distance between us, between the different generations, then those are just going to tear us apart as opposed to put us together, right? So if we're trying to bring all the generations, different, youth and whatever together, then we should synergize that. So just in last, I wanted to talk about some of the benefits of synergy. One is trust, right? If you synergize together, you can trust each other. You know that you have somewhere to have a safe space, right? And you're not worried about what they're going to say or do or whatever. The second thing is better focus, right? If you're synergizing together, you're more focused on a goal or the aspiration of what it is that the other's trying to accomplish. If you're trying to help them through a situation, maybe that's what it is, right? You're focusing, helping them focus. Maybe they're seeing one piece of it and you can offer a different kind of focus. 3 is diversity. Allows you to come together, multiple different peoples. And, Shane and I work with people all over the world, and to see that diversity kind of come together in a common goal is just amazing what can be accomplished. And you can learn things from them, right? Their cultures and their ways that we just don't have. And so I love that about them. They've shared some of their food and just some of the ways that they think. And it's like, wow, I didn't really ever think about that, or I would never have that food, generally speaking, because that's just not something I grew up eating. But great food. Thanks for sharing. 4th is creativity, right? As you work together, I think about Shane and I and our journey through this. We've had to be very creative in the way that we do things, and we've had to overcome some of those challenges that we've been faced with. And then number 5 is just a better solution, right? Some better idea, better way of accomplishing it that's going to give you a benefit or gain. And then I just have one last quote to end with. Dave Willis, who is a pastor and a writer, said, "Show respect even to people who don't deserve it, not as a reflection of their character, but as a reflection of yours. And I love that because it puts that ownership back on you, and you saying, how am I going to answer to that call? How am I going to show up in the world? How am I going to be me and still be respectful of others, even if they don't deserve it? So that's what, my last quote, and just the things that I had to talk about today. So hopefully you enjoyed this session that Shane and I had talking about synergizing, and hopefully you felt Shane and I's synergy as we talked today.